As you might rightfully think right now, boats are generally slower than cars. While this is true, there's one boat that makes this test possible. It is the Shih Tzu Longfin. Its top speed is 81 km per hour higher than the second fastest boat. This makes it the only boat that is able to compete with the cars in the test I got for you today. Also, the route I have chosen makes the test quite exciting. The boat will go on a slightly straighter road that still has some turns, making it so that the boat can't just blast away top speed. The cars, however, will have to go on a twisty dirt road next to the river, which will make for a close and intense race till the end. For our first one we have the boat run, which will give us the time to beat. Starting off, the boat makes some quick progress as it has a lot of open water right here and doesn't really have to make any turns. The first turn goes relatively well. I only have to let go of the gas a couple times, which is relatively fine. Same for the jump right here, doesn't really cost us any time, and afterwards we have quite a lot of straight. Starting now, the sections are going to be a little bit smaller. Here we can still carry a lot of speed, but this next section we have to slow down a little bit to make the turn, but still carrying a lot of speed. And this next section we bump a little bit on the rocks, which isn't too much of a time loss and actually helps us sometimes change direction, which makes the turns a bit faster. Because the big disadvantage of this boat is that it can turn really slow, as you saw there as well. This next part is as well one where I have to slow down a lot just to make the turn or not beach the boat. But now we're going to pick up a little bit of speed again. Also be careful not to beach it a little bit too much. And here we also have to slow down a little bit to make this corner. Although we took a great line, which means we can get this slight little gap, and we're heading towards the finish now and finishing at a time of 1 minute and 10 seconds. The first car that will attempt to beat the boat is the Rusty Rebel, which is a car that spawns quite a lot in this area, which is why I've chosen it. So this is a very representative car that a lot of people will be using here if they just happen to be here and just steal some traffic car. It's actually quite a good car for this specific test. Although it's really slow on normal road conditions, it has a very low traction loss multiplier of only 0.2, which means it barely loses any speed and traction on dirt, which makes it really good for this specific test. Also, it has a relatively soft suspension, which also makes it good on the bumps, which means it can perform relatively well on this. However, its base performance is really bad. Its top speed fully upgraded is 162, and this is a stock one. So even though it has very little traction loss multiplier, it doesn't even have a higher top speed than the boat, for example. Although both are not really able to use that top speed, its acceleration is also not that great, which means it is already losing out to the boat right around here, and it still has to go quite a little bit. But it's quite a fun car to drive. As you saw, it can go a bit slidey and the suspension catches it quite well, which makes it quite fun. But yeah, it's not able to compete, and we will have to go for a slightly faster car for our next run if we want to try and beat the boat. For the next car we have the Sultan, which is also a car that regularly spawns in this area. This, however, has a lot higher base stats, which make it maybe a little bit faster. However, it also has a traction loss multiplier of 1, which is, the standard value, which means it gets slowed down quite a lot. However, like I said, its base stats are significantly higher than the Rusty Rebel, which means I have a little bit of hope. Also, it's still 4-wheel drive, and the Sultan is kind of known for being a rally-ish car. Although, like I said, traction multiplier is quite high. But as you can see here, it is definitely a little bit fast on the straights. But you can also see it struggles a little bit, especially on bumpy sections compared to the Rusty, because it's more like a regular car, so its suspension isn't that great. However, it's still doing quite alright, and as you can see, the acceleration definitely helps quite a bit. But you can also see that it's being slowed down a lot in the high-speed sections because of that traction loss multiplier. And as you can see here, it's already at the minute, and it still has a lot of section to go, especially this last section, which is relatively slow. Will stop it quite a lot. And as you can see here, it's already at 110, and we still have to go down the whole hill here and then across basically the whole beach. And in the end, it will be a little bit faster than the Rusty Rebel, but only marginally. For next car, we will go a lot higher in performance. It's the Sultan Classic RS, which especially shines with its traction loss multiplier of 0, so it's basically unaffected, which means it zooms quite fast through these sections here. Obviously, its suspension isn't to par with, for example, the Rusty Rebel, However, it is doing quite well, although I have to slow down a little bit at these bumps just to not lose control. But its traction loss multiplier definitely helps in just keeping control. Once I slide a bit out, I can just easily regain traction, and it makes it really fast. As you can see here, it's already up on both the Rusty Rebel and the normal Sultan, and as you can see here, it carries way more speed than both of them. So it's basically like a Rusty Rebel with even better traction loss multiplier, and it has way higher base stats, which makes it incredibly fast here. This is still the unupgraded version, but as you can see, it's still performing super well. And as you can see, we're up like quite a lot. Before the Sultan at this point was already over a minute. As you remember, it was around a minute 10, I think, going into this grass section in a second here. And this one is, still on pace to like get close to the boat. Obviously, the boat would have finished now, and this one takes just a little bit longer, but still a 1:13 is quite respectable. For next car, we're going to brute force it with the Italy GTO fully upgraded. This car has a lot of power, a lot of acceleration, top speed. However, it does have a traction loss multiplier of 1. So compared to the Sultan, this will be just brute forcing it, just trying to accelerate as much as possible. As you can see, it works quite well. But on these sections, you see it loses a lot of traction because it just doesn't have it on the dirt. However, in a second we will get to a little bit more open areas where we can use a little bit more of the power. But as you can see, the bumps, it really doesn't like the bumps, which makes it not as fast as it could be. If this performance paired with the Sultan Classic, it would have easily beaten it. But as you can see, it's still zooming on these straight parts. It's way faster than anything we've seen. But once again, struggling quite a lot on the corners. As you can see here, just barely making that, bouncing around a lot. But as you can see, we're approaching this point at the 1 minute mark. A little bit faster than the Sultan Classic, a lot faster than the Sultan and Rusty before. And we're arriving now on the beach, and we would have finished in the boat now, and it still finishes within 1:12, which is very nice. Next up, we have the Sanchez, which you can just find in traffic here. This is also an unupgraded variant, so it's just one you could just steal from any NPC. But however, it is a bike, and added to that is an off-road bike. Its traction multiplier, loss multiplier is about 0.5, which makes it pretty decent off-road. And obviously you can see here with the bumps, because it's a bike, you don't really have to worry about spinning out, so you can just straight line it a lot of the time, which makes it really fast. You even have some time to get a little bit more speed. As you can see here, it kinda lacks a little bit of speed because, well, it's unupgraded and Sanchez isn't the fastest, especially if you don't wheelie. But it carries so much speed to corners, like here, like you just cut off so much time right there. And as you can see, we are getting towards 50 seconds, and we are like at a very far point already. And we're going towards this place where the Sultan Classic and the Italy GTO were, well, around a minute, and this goes onto the grass section at a minute, and we will actually finish before the boat this time with a time of 1 minute 8. However, I want to do one more to beat the boat with an actual car, and we have the Draugur fully upgraded, and as you can see already, it's flying through these sections. It has a very low traction loss multiplier of 0.15. Well, it doesn't quite compare to the 0 of a Sultan Classic. It doesn't really matter on this place because its traction is incredibly high, just its base traction, so the difference with the Sultan Classic is compensated by that very largely. Also, the top speed aspect of traction loss multiplier doesn't really affect it on this specific track because there is not a lot of places where it can actually release its full top speed, which this car doesn't actually have a lot of. It tops out at 179, but like I said, it doesn't really need it on this track. And as you can see, it's flying through here, already arriving at this point at 50 seconds, while a lot of cars already were at a minute here. And once again, just easing through the section due to its suspension also. And it actually finishes with the fastest time, with just 1 minute and 3 seconds, making it about 7 seconds faster than the boat.